This is the Weigh-In Podcast by Benoit Chestnut and normally Sebastian Romero on this one. But he will return at some point. Woo! So let's get into this one. So for this week, we got for you guys the breakdown of Pacquiao Barrios. Interesting. If you didn't see it, go ahead, look it up, spoil it for yourself because we're going to definitely spoil it on here. And we're also going to touch that Max Holloway, Dustin Poirier. We're going to touch that because that was that was interesting as well. But nonetheless, I think we'll touch Dustin Poirier and Max Holloway first. But nonetheless, that is this week's weigh-in. So let's get into this one. So if we jump right into this Dustin Poirier, Max Holloway, because we know Pacquiao Barrios is a whole thing in itself. It was good. It was good. I think it was good, and I think that was more of an accurate way that should have came out. I feel like Dustin put in as much as he could, but I think we're looking at a really, really good Max Holloway right now. You look at Max, he's top of the totem. So when we talk top of the totem, Max, he's doing things in the ways that as he should, So that's one thing we very well know. That was really good. It was a win by decision in round 5, so we know that it was good. It was pretty good. It was pretty good, but it was well on worth it. That Max Holloway. It was worth it. So after seeing Holloway, that was. I thought that brought to what we thought it was going to. I thought it brought what a fan would want to see. That was a very well fought fight by both fighters. Dustin Poirier did really good. Dustin and Max, great fight. So I really, in terms of that, I saw a lot of good. What we saw from Dustin that was really good that I did like was we saw a lot of good combinations from Dustin. A lot of good combinations. He was very well combinating very well throughout the fight. The difference was Max was answering him. Max Holloway was answering him. And I think Max Holloway got the better of the exchanges as well. Some of those exchanges, I think Max Holloway got the better. And I think that's something true to be said that Max Holloway, knows what he's doing. And that was for the BMF belt. If you don't know what BMF means, we won't Google it. As I normally say, Google it. Go ahead and Google it because we're not going to explain what BMF means on the pod. It's just not something we're going to explain on the pod. We're not going to explain that on the pod. So Google it. But I thought that Max Holloway, I got Max Dustin fight really well. I liked the combinations, but I liked how, Max was able to take most of the exchange. I liked how in the later rounds, we got to see as it progressed, we got to see a little more Max. And I think I like that. I think Max very well put himself in a position to win that fight. And I think he did what he needed to do to win that fight. Unlike the Pacquiao Barrios, totally different thing. I kind of felt that Dustin Max was really good. I also thought, there was a point in the middle where I kind of thought this could kind of go either way, depending on if, Dustin could come out and take some more rounds. But I think it was very clear. I think it was very clear that Max Holloway was not going to be beat that night. And I think that just goes without saying that, Max Holloway is He's a really good fighter, and he's not somebody you could just walk in and be like, "Yeah, I'm gonna beat Max Holloway." I don't think so. I don't think it's gonna go like that. I rarely would have ever thought you'd go in there and take out Max Holloway like that. That's not gonna happen. We're talking about Max Holloway here, who was a really good fighter, and that's not something I think I'd even see. Max Holloway coming up and not performing the way he does. We all know Max Holloway he can fight. If you haven't seen some Max Holloway fights, I would suggest going and watching some Max Holloway fights because Max Holloway can fight. We all know that. He definitely is one of the guys that is up there in terms of UFC. We know that much about Max Holloway. You know, he gets after it, he gets out there, and that's just one thing to say. Max Holloway he's not somebody that's gonna go in there and get his butt handed to him in the ring. He's gonna go in there, he's gonna put up a fight. You know, that's one thing that we all know, that we all should know. If you have not seen Max, you wouldn't, but we all know about Max. That's one thing we we know that. And if many of you don't know, you would know Max Holloway for the Justin Gaethje fight where he knocked out Justin Gaethje in almost the last second, because that's the type of guy Max Holloway is. So that just if you didn't see that fight, that is a fight to see. If you don't know Max Holloway, see that Max Holloway Justin Gaethje, and that'll kind of give you the kind of guy Max Holloway is. But nonetheless, I think that was a well-rounded event for Max. I think that's great that he was able to get the verdict he wanted. I think everything was fairly well in terms of Max. That's great. You know what I mean? Like, that's great to see that Max was able to get his job done on that night. I really think that it's stuff like that where I say, hey, you're doing good, you've done it, you're there. Now you gotta continue to do it time after time. It's like I always say on here, you gotta compete as one's best self. We talked about you have to be your best self. And that's something that we truly got. Holloway. We got a good Max Holloway on Saturday night, and that's something that you really, really, really look at and you say, "Wow, that's good." That's really good, and that's what I like in terms of Max Holloway. That's good. He was able to get out there and do exactly what he felt he could do, and he did that. He did just that. So I kind of feel like when you have a moment like that where you get a good looking fighter on one side that really does what he needs to do in the ring and really dominates, it kind of leads you to believe, wow, you know, that guy's really good. If you didn't already know, like in terms of me, I already knew that Max Holloway is the real deal. There is no other. There, you get Max Holloway, he's gonna fight. And that's what a lot of these older UFC guys that kind of been around there. I'm not saying so much with these younger ones because they're all, I feel like the talent picking of Dana White is, I mean, some of it is really good. And there's some where it's like, all right, we're not getting a lot of like, all right, bloodbath for fights. And I'm not saying this in terms of we do get it here and there, but like I'm telling you, we're not getting a lot of strong guys out of anything. Like you still got like Charles Oliveira that has been around, still rolling through some stuff. You got it's. I mean, I understand we get an Israel Adesanya, and we have Alexander Pereira taking over some stuff, but there are some things where it's like, do we ever really get what we're expecting to see? It's one of those things where it's like, do we ever really get what we're looking to see? And I think that's an interesting. It's an interesting point of view only because I would say, how often do we get, a guy that gets in that? How often do we see something go to the distance? How often do you get a guy that literally laid everything down, and you see two guys going in there and you get something done in the last second? I think UFC is I, it's dominated by, I want to feel like in certain weight classes by the few people. I think the talent uprising is, it is getting better. But I think there was a period of time where, you got a lot of these guys that have been there for a while that are taking over, that are really putting, belts around them. It's those guys that have really done the numbers in UFC, and to me it kind of feels like, all right, like, I would like to see some good talent. Now, don't get me wrong, we had some good talent with Bo Nickel and the guys coming out. Like, there are good talented UFC guys, but there are some of them that I just kind of feel like they aren't there. I look at some of these pre-fights, some of this stuff, and it's some of them that I'm looking and I'm like, I don't know how much longer Dana White's gonna keep you, you know. But it's not a lot of them like that. It's just a few of them because I feel like that has been rooted out a lot, and I think that we're getting a better UFC right now. But I feel like you gotta want to keep tight competition. Uh, Max Holloway, Dustin, and Dustin. I love to see that. That was amazing. That was pretty good. That was a fight that I'm like, amazing. Like, I was in there like, all right, those guys are getting down. That's something that I said. This is great, but more than less, that's the kind of thing we want to see. You know, Amidst that Pacquiao fight, which I'm just gonna tell you right now, before I even get into Pacquiao, I felt Pacquiao won the fight. As many may not agree with me on that, I thought Pacquiao went in there and did what he kind of had to do. I thought we had a good boxing Pacquiao. I thought Manny Pacquiao put in a lot of that. I think now I can see why he didn't. You know, Effectively, when you look at Barrios was using his jab a little more. I don't think that changes the fact, but I think we had a good Manny Pacquiao in there. I think Manny went in there and did what he had to do. You know, I think Manny did exactly what he had to do. I think that's something that no matter how you want to draw the lines, that fight was nice. To see Manny get back in the ring and do that, great. The best thing I think, the best thing I think for Manny is I want to see him run that back. I want to see him run it back. I know a lot of people might not agree with me, but I want to see that run it back. I think Manny's got what it takes. You know, some people say, what if we could get another Pacquiao Mayweather? Ooh, I'd love to see Pacquiao Mayweather. That'd probably be pretty cool. But nonetheless, let's get on to this Barrios fight. I thought Manny Pacquiao boxed very well. I thought he was combinating very well. I just think, in terms of it, I think Barrios was able to utilize the jab a lot more than Manny was, and I think Manny should have just cut that off and really should have let loose a little more. You know, I see Manny wanted to keep it more of a clean fight. And I'm not saying, in terms of like, okay, clean as in not dirty. I'm saying clean as in not bloodbathy. And I say that because, um, you know, for the ones that might not really understand what that means where guys get cut real hard over their eye, or where there's a huge cut and there's a lot of blood coming from the cut. And some not everybody cuts up like that. I understand, but I kind of felt like Pacquiao should have let a little more loose, out of him, and I think it was a really good Pacquiao, and I think they got there because I think Barrios kind of figured Pacquiao was going to tire himself out, and that's not true. Pacquiao didn't. Pacquiao boxed a better fight. I think that Pacquiao wasn't going to tire himself out, but I think everybody was looking to see if that was going to be the case, but it wasn't. And I think that's a mistake on Barrios' part. You can't expect every fighter is going to tire out. But as we said earlier, talked about one's best self. We talk about that. That was Manny Pacquiao brought his best self out there because he went in there and he got a draw. So either way, Barrios can't say he beat Pacquiao. Pacquiao can't say he beat Barrios. We're in another Lamont Roach situation. Only difference is we're not talking about a guy that is undefeated. We're not talking about a guy who, has knocked out a lot of people. Like when we look at, I get Barrios has got what he's got. Barrios has got his boxing record. He's got his hows and whats. Because Barrios is 29-2-1, 18 KOs. That's just what I'm looking at right now. We'll get the official as I look it up. But nonetheless, that's what I'm saying. That's a good looking. I'm going to go to Box Rec. I'm going to get it for you from Box Rec. So 29-2-2 now. So after the Pacquiao fight. So that gets that ready. That gets that up for you guys. But nonetheless, I really felt like, okay, we should have had, Pacquiao should have let loose a little more. And I think that's terms of truth. And like I said, Barrios, he made a mistake. You cannot go in there and do the Tank Davis and say, hey, this guy's going to tire himself out. Now, I'm not saying that's what Tank did. We all know what Tank did. I felt Tank didn't take the fight serious with Lamont Roach. But we've had enough of that on this pod. I think Barrios did something similar. You figured Manny's going to tire himself out, but Manny didn't. That's how that fight was so close. But I think Pacquiao should have let loose a lot more. I think Pacquiao should have kind of put himself out there a little more because, Barrios wasn't. I really think he was getting a lot of the punches of Pacquiao when it's combinating was really, you could tell, was looking good on Barrios. Like you could tell he was getting in there strong on Barrios. I think in terms of that, I would have liked to have seen the combinations a little tighter and pack them up a little more from Manny. But I think in terms of all of that, I think it was a really well fight, for a guy who's coming back out of retirement. So you can't expect him to be perfect, but I think that was a good Manny Pacquiao that came out and did what he had to do Saturday night. That was a very well thing. I liked the event. I think, did I agree with some of the judging? Not really. I kind of had Pacquiao up by 1 point. I had Pacquiao up by a round, maybe two in my scorecard. How I kind of felt it should have been scored. But then again, I'm not a judge. I'm not a referee, but I kind of felt that I thought Pacquiao was up. I thought Pacquiao should have had the fight, but they had a tie, a draw. But I didn't quite have that. I had Pacquiao winning. But I think I had Pacquiao winning because I thought Pacquiao dominated very well. And that's what I thought. I thought that I didn't think Barrios' jab was effective at all. I didn't think it really did much. But some could not agree with me because, Barrios' jab kept Manny Pacquiao from dominating. And I understand many are going to disagree. But, I kind of felt Manny still got through to him. I kind of felt like Manny still was able to get in there. And that's why I kind of felt like Manny was doing what he had to do, especially in those early rounds. I thought Manny took a lot of those early. That's what I thought. I thought Manny was doing well in some of those early rounds. But, the judging didn't so much as agree. I thought Pacquiao won the fight. I felt it was a Pacquiao won fight. But then again, I'm not disappointed in the scorecard, because it was a draw. It wasn't like they gave it to Barrios. It wasn't like they gave it to Pacquiao. They draw. They say we don't really side. We don't really got a winner here. We got a draw. And that's why I say I want it ran back. I want to get a winner out of this. And if I think they ran it back, I still think Pacquiao would win the fight. I'm Pacquiao all the way. You know, I get Barrios is, as some would say, younger, but I got Pacquiao. Pacquiao's got the experience. Pacquiao went in there, coming off of coming off of being retired, came in there and gave Barrios a good fight. How many retired boxers can do that? Other than like Floyd Money Mayweather and some of those and some of his crew, some of them guys back then. Not too many of them go in there and give somebody a show. That's the one thing I'm like, come on. That's the thing. I'm like, that's why I felt Pacquiao should have had that fight. Pacquiao went in there and did exactly what he had to do. Pacquiao was combinating. It wasn't where Pacquiao was just, not being able to. I get it. Maybe you gave Barrios a round, maybe two, couple rounds, where Pacquiao wasn't combinating so well. But I felt like every round after that, he came back and he combinated very well. I felt like Pacquiao came out and showed us, not prime Manny Pacquiao, but he showed us some Manny Pacquiao here. That's what I felt. I felt like he turned around and showed us Pacquiao, but the judges did not so much agree with me on that one. Judges did not agree, but I felt like Manny did what he had to do. Now, the judges, not so much. They don't agree with me on that one, but I felt Manny did what he had to do. That's just me. I felt Manny went in there and did what he had to do, but judging don't agree with me. And that's why I felt the way I felt. I felt like Manny went in there and said, hey, I got to do this, I got to do that. And I felt like he did exactly this and that. But judging, not so much. Judging, not so much agreed with me. But nonetheless, I still felt the way I did. I still felt like it was a Pacquiao fight. Whether the judges agreed or not, I still felt like it was a Manny Pacquiao fight. No matter how the judging swung, I still feel like that was Manny Pacquiao's fight. Regardless of where the way the cards went, I felt like it was Manny all day. But that's one thing I say. I say very well to you guys is the fans of the weigh-in is you got to understand if you've been watching us comfortably, video after video, you're going to start to understand. You're going to get the boxing in some of these fights, the breakdown, how we felt. One of these days we got to definitely like live stream us a fight and not show the fight because, we can't do that. You really can't show a fight that is pay-per-view for free. You got to pay for the fight. But definitely should do like a live stream and break down our scorecards and say, hey, I felt like Manny had round one or Manny had. I'm not saying that's what my scorecard said. I'm just, giving you an analogy here. Manny had round one or Barrios had round two, to kind of round it up because the only way you get better at scoring a fight is doing fight after fight after fight and just watching a lot of boxing and learning. You got to learn and, everybody can make mistakes. And I feel like everybody could agree to disagree and say, well, no, I felt Barrios did what he had to do. Everybody's entitled to that opinion. But at the same time, I'm entitled to my Pacquiao opinion of I felt like Manny was combinating well. I just thought that I would have liked to have seen it a little tighter and a little heavier. I would have liked him to packed it up a little more. Now, that is just me. Because I felt like he was getting through to Barrios and I felt he should have packed it up. Now, that is me. But nonetheless, I feel like, that is something in the near future we will start doing. Getting ourselves better as a pod. Right now, obviously, I will sit here and admit that our viewership is up and down. It's never consistent. It's not at a consistent level enough to say, hey, we're going to live stream for a couple hours. Some of you might be interested in that. And if so, please do like the video and comment, and we'll definitely view that avenue if it's something you, the fans, want. But, it's definitely, that's one of the things we don't really do as much as we should. Obviously every other episode or every episode, we always sometimes talk business or weigh in. I kind of feel like we could media a lot better. We could do a lot more. And in terms of it, we don't right now, but that's just like this year's resolution, New Year's resolution goal as a podcast was to get a video out twice a week. We've been doing that. So I think in terms of that, every year I'm going to try to make sure something's being better by New Year's resolution. And I think this year I've also tackled, trying to get better at, kind of feeling how I feel certain fights should go. And with me saying that, that's with saying, hey, I feel this is a Pacquiao fight, that's a this fight, getting a lot of that and saying, hey, getting better at that point of that part of boxing and that part of, watching the fights. And that's why, but definitely we'll try to put my score, definitely in the future, if you guys want, I can put up some of the scorecards I do. I have a little spreadsheet where when I watch a fight, I'll kind of put it through the spreadsheet, which is really good. And then what happens is it'll kind of add up like what it's supposed to. Pretty cool. I think I found it online at one point. It's like a boxing spreadsheet, something like that. I don't remember where I got it, but it's like a boxing spreadsheet. Interactive boxing spreadsheet, scorecard spreadsheet. Really, really good. I use it almost every fight. I kind of say, I think what round is what. I kind of feel like, for rounds, 10-8 or 10-9, I kind of feel like I score them similar. But I kind of feel like we should have got, I feel this is always going to be my opinion. I feel we should have got a Pacquiao victory. And I'm going to keep saying that over and over again because that's the truth. But other than saying Pacquiao dominated well, I thought the event was very well. I thought round by round, I felt both guys did very well. I felt we got a good fight. We didn't get a one-sided fight. I kind of felt like we did get up the middle, but I just felt a little more we had a Pacquiao fight. But I felt like it was very well from both corners. I felt like they were saying a lot of the stuff. I think both corners were doing very well. When they were doing the trainer tracks, I liked what I was hearing from both corners. They were doing stuff very well. I like how so many more were doing really good stuff throughout the fight. And I think that's why we had such a great fight. I think everybody was trying to give the people what they want. And that's why I felt that was really well, being able to give the people what they want and whatnot. And that's a really good thing in terms of just that for an event. I felt like that was really good in terms of that, but I felt like that was solid. That was very solid for Pacquiao. But nonetheless, we're kind of drawing into the end here. And with that being said, drawing into the end, like, comment, subscribe, share. This is another one, how I feel about these EPIs, how I feel some EPIs. I feel like they're worse than others. I say that, and then some of the ones that I don't like the most do the best. So it's always very different. But nonetheless, I'm going to continue grinding out, trying to get better and better every EPI. I'm trying to do everything I can. But with that being said, this is The Weigh-In by Ben Chestnut and Sebastian Romero. And this is this week's Weigh-In. Weigh-In out.
The Weigh-In, where stories